98% of people will never unlock their full creative potential. It's as if they're working from behind a lock, peeking through a keyhole with the key nowhere to be found. But one thing I realized after reading 524 pages on the biography of Leonardo da Vinci is that very often this key is just within reach. See, what the other 2% know is that every single one of us carries our version of the Mona Lisa, the Last Supper, or the Vitruvian Man. And Leonardo's genius, he wasn't even a born genius, or was he necessarily talented? All of his genius boils down to one single trait. A trait that we used to have in abundance as a child. And we still occasionally use it to go down rabbit holes on Reddit or YouTube. The trait I'm of course referring to is curiosity. But his curiosity worked a little bit different compared to yours or mine. See, this is how curiosity usually works. We start to notice something, and then follows a question. How does that work? Why is that? And this question, it really starts to itch. So we of course start to look for answers. We do a bit of research, and then eventually we arrive at an answer that scratches our itch. However, Leonardo's curiosity works a little bit different. His curiosity is more like a web. When we get an answer, we stop. But Leonardo, he kept asking why. He asked, why do birds fly? And then he wondered, why do the wings of birds flap in this exact way? And answering these questions led to him making very realistic paintings of flight machines. Or let's take this other example. He used to observe the way water flows for hours. And then he made the connection that blood in the human body flows in a very similar way. This is only one of the examples of pattern recognition. One thing about Leonardo is that he wouldn't just theorize. He would only arrive at conclusions from experience and experiments. And what did he use to get to those conclusions? He would perceive everything with all of his senses. This then again stimulated his imagination, which led to lifelike paintings like the Mona Lisa. But most of these, that's not how we are going to unlock this creative genius that rests within us. We are going to start with a tool that every single one of us uses. And we are going to reimagine it and use it just like Leonardo did. And I'm of course referring to the to-do list. See, Leonardo used his to-do list in a very interesting way. Leonardo's to-do list was very different from yours or mine. As you can see, my to-do list of today is to record the video, edit the video, buy groceries, and go work. Now, what's the problem with this to-do list? Exactly. It feels like a list of obligations. Now, if we compare that to Leonardo's to-do list, describe the tongue of a woodpecker. Observe how goose foot opens and closes. Describe the jaw of a crocodile. Ask how to square a triangle. This is not a to-do list. This is essentially a curiosity list. See, in my example, this is a list of obligations. In Leonardo's example, this is a list of essentially expanding your brain. Obviously, a list like this is not realistic in modern times, but I think I found a solution. See, the simple solution, combine the two. Allow curiosity to be added to your to-do list. Actually, deliberately take the time to add curiosity to your to-do list. And that's all. As simple as it sounds, that's all you have to do. Allow curiosity to enter your list of tasks that you need to do for the day. However, there is one thing we need to look out for when following our curiosities. And that is, of course, excessive content consumption or doom scrolling. See, we want to engage with stuff that stimulates our mind instead of sedates it. And the way we are going to prevent this from happening is by simply looking at the inputs of Leonardo da Vinci that stimulated his mind and prevented him from excessive doom scrolling. There was no doom scrolling during his time, so. After reading the book, I realized that there are only 3 main inputs that make up this genius brain of Leonardo. And what we are going to do is to slightly iterate on them and make them available to use for us for modern times. And these 3 inputs are observe. He used to study nature, especially water, for hours in order to understand how water flows. Then he would also perceive through his senses. He would feel muscles and feel skin in order to understand how everything works together. And then he would only derive at conclusions from experiments and experience. And of course, he did various tests on the human body, which we are of course not going to do. But here's what we are going to do. The first thing we are going to do is to observe. But unlike Leonardo, we are not going to observe nature. We are going to observe a few other things. The first thing I want you to observe is content. And the difference between observing content and consuming is to continuously ask yourself questions. The first question I would like you to answer is, why are you still watching this video? What do you hope to learn from this video? What do you hope to learn from my insights from Leonardo da Vinci? Besides content, there is one more important thing that we are going to observe. This thing is actually a being. We are going to observe yourself. And let me give you a personal example for this. The reason I made this switch in my YouTube channel and now dissect the principles from biographies is because I realized after observing myself that I loved listening to the Founders podcast. And I also loved reading biographies. Now, I did not see myself as a podcaster, but I loved creating videos on YouTube. So 1 + 1 = 2, and now I make these types of videos. And this would not have happened if I didn't properly observe myself. All right, a little in-betweener for those that are also interested in business and not just expanding our creative genius. I got this idea from Alex Hormozi, and the idea is pretty simple. He says he never skips ads. And I thought about it and it kind of makes sense. Why? Because ads have one goal: to persuade. Ads are the most compressed form of persuasion. Why? Because they are structured to invoke an emotion. And once you understand that, you also understand that observing ads is a higher leverage task than observing regular content. Let's take the Facebook static ad, for example. It is one single frame, and its single goal is to persuade you into eventually going to a website and then purchase something in most cases. Think about it. It is one frame with one hook, essentially one sentence. And in many such cases, it leads to someone generating money on the back end. Yet me personally, I've never actually questioned it. I never stopped and paused and asked the question, why did this ad make me stop scrolling? Or what emotion did this ad try to invoke within me? Or what is the promise that this ad tries to deliver? Or what is the call to action? How are they trying to make me click the website? And as soon as you got this covered, we can move on to input number 2. The second input that we are going to copy from Leonardo is perceive. But unlike Leonardo, which perceived through all of his 5 senses, we are going to use something different. Now, Leonardo, he used to really feel bodies in order to understand how muscles work. Or he would watch water for hours in order to understand how water flows. Of course, we could also do this, but I think we should perceive in a different way. We should perceive through emotion. See, I think a modern-day genius really understands how emotion works, especially with content. And of course, the world runs on content nowadays. So the winners are the people that understand how to evoke the correct emotions in other people. And we can test this out. I want you to go to a very viral YouTube video, then scroll to the comments and actually read through the comments for a few minutes. And as you might realize, there is always one overarching emotion in a specific comment section. And as soon as you understand this, you understand that specific types of videos evoke specific types of emotions in people. Now, I think it's time to modernize experience and experiments. Leonardo took real pride in that he was an unlettered man, a man with no formal education, and he only derived at conclusions from running tons of experiments. Now, I wondered, what would the modern version of Leonardo do in this case? And I think I found a solution. I think the modern version of Leonardo, the creative genius, would be a relentless A-B tester. The A-B tester is not a genius because of testing their outputs. We all know that there's always something to improve. There's always a better YouTube title or thumbnail. No. The A-B tester is a genius because of them testing their inputs. And let me ask you this question. When is the last time you've read a book that is completely out of your interests? Or watched a movie that's completely out of something that piques your interest? For me, I can't even remember. So that's one thing that I am going to do. But I did realize that this A-B tester is fluid. The A-B tester allows inputs to come from anywhere. And I think that is where we can finally close on inputs and move on to the outputs of Leonardo da Vinci. The genius creative outputs of Da Vinci, his masterworks. For one, he was able to connect ideas across domains. Secondly, he was able to recognize patterns in all areas of nature. And thirdly, he would iterate on his work until it neared perfection, even though his work would never finish. And that's what led to his genius. Right? No. I think what really led to Leonardo's genius is the things that he didn't do. And I want you to excuse me for a moment while I cook up the greatest drawing of all time, so hold on for a second. Okay, so before I reveal my beautiful painting, I want to share a quote by Da Vinci. And Da Vinci said that men of lofty genius often accomplish the most when they work the least. So now I present to you the cow and the lion. See, Da Vinci's genius is actually not from the things he did, but the things he didn't do. And Naval shares this exact idea. He said that we are not supposed to work like cows. We are not supposed to graze all day. Even though society praises the hardest worker and the one who puts in the most hours, we are supposed to work like lions. We rest, we think, we allow our subconscious to do the work. And then when it's time to eat, we work, we focus with real intensity, and we get the job done. And after that, we rest, we allow our subconscious to once again do the work, take in ideas, create that feedback loop of iteration. And then when it's time to hunt, we once again work with full intensity, just like a lion. The lion, he simply knows better. He understands something that Leonardo understood over 500 years ago. The lion simply understands that he should not concern himself with what society thinks is best for him. The lion deeply understands that part of the work routine is rest. And this rest does not come from laziness. It comes from preparation. It comes from allowing your subconscious to do the work. Now, my question to you is, when will you allow your subconscious to do the work, to let the ideas marinate? Speaking of letting ideas marinate, I think it's time for the closing section. Okay, quickly before we close off, I also want to cover this. I want you to simply imagine more. I will quickly go over this. All of these sketches seemed ridiculous when Da Vinci was still alive. As you can see here, a flight machine. As you can see here, a weird turtle-like sketch. And as you can see here, a screw-like thingy. All of these turned into realities. We have the airplane, we have the tank, and we have the helicopter. And as children, our imagination seemed almost real. While as adults, we often don't take our imagination that serious, which I think is a waste. And I think to benefit our creative genius, we should indeed, just like Da Vinci did, treat these as realities. Mind is matter. What's in your mind can eventually be put into reality. And to conclude this video, I'd like to read a quick journal entry which I wrote shortly after reading the book. The Paradox of Adulthood. As I was thinking, I just realized. Much of adulthood is returning back to a childlike state. The concept of overvaluing stuff and excessive importance does not exist. There are no insecurities. You create for the sake of it and do not care about external rewards. You feel genuine joy and effort feels good because you're doing stuff out of curiosity. Curiosity is the main driver of what you're doing. Everything feels new and fresh. So make an effort to return to this childlike state. And I think that's all. Thank you for watching.